My uncle tried turning my brother into his personal lab rat until I exposed him and destroyed his life. Now he's back, pretending to care again, and I'm prepared to put him in his grave. My little brother Timothy was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 8. As you can probably guess, certain light flashes would trigger his seizures. But what most people don't know is that his diagnosis would sometimes make him extremely numb to emotions too. He'd go days without smiling, crying, or reacting to anything, like someone had switched off his feelings. But gaming was different. When Timothy gamed, something sparked. For those precious hours, he'd actually laugh at wins, groan at losses. He was incredible at competitive games, like reaching champion rank in Valorant at age 12, incredible. His neurologist said the emotional numbing made him tactically perfect. No tilt, no rage, just pure strategy. During all this, I was left to babysit him because my mom worked double shifts as an ER nurse. Until one day, my mom made a mistake that would traumatize us forever. She accepted Uncle Derek's offer to move in and act as a live-in babysitter. Derek was Dad's brother, always talking about how he'd studied psychology in college, how he'd helped friends through tough times, seemed stable and responsible. In just the first week, Derek immediately noticed Timothy's numbness. During dinner, he'd wave his hand in front of Timothy's face. "Hello? Anyone home?" When Timothy didn't react to his jokes or stories, Derek took it personally. "Kid's rude," he told me. "Needs to learn some manners." I tried to explain the emotional numbing, showed him Timothy's medical papers, but instead of apologizing for being a jerk, or even just leaving Timothy alone, his eyes lit up. "So he can't feel anything? Like anything at all?" The way he said it made my skin crawl. I slowly nodded, and from there I made sure to keep a closer eye on Timothy. But I didn't want Timothy to think I thought he was made of glass, or grow up to think he couldn't do anything by himself. So I tried to give him some distance when I could, whenever Derek seemed preoccupied. I was fast asleep, and taking one of those midday summer naps when I heard it. Derek was in Timothy's bedroom, speaking in implicit detail about how he was going to turn him into a human centipede. I barged in, and instinctively went to hold Timothy, who was extremely pale with a faraway look in his eyes. "What the actual F— You're welcome," Derek interrupted. "It's exposure therapy. I'm helping him feel again, you ungrateful brat." I felt Timothy's trembling fingers slowly wrap around my hand. Anger boiled my blood. The next evening when my mom came home from work, I ambushed her. "Mom," Derek told Timothy. "Son, whatever it is, I don't want to hear it." I sighed. She kept going. "Derek is a free babysitter. We're lucky to have him. So if he says a few weird things, you have to let it slide." I kept my eyes glued to the ground, trying my best not to cry. That was the moment my childhood ended, and I would have to be the parent that I never had. But for the next few weeks, everything seemed okay. I figured that my mom had talked to Derek, and he had finally decided to stop abusing my little brother. He made it seem so convincing. He'd bring us ice cream and be patient while Timothy took 10 minutes to choose a flavor. He canceled his concert when he found out there would be aggravating flashing lights. Then came Timmy's gaming tournament. It was the Valorant Champions Tour Open qualifiers. There was a $5,000 prize pool for the qualifier stage. I wasn't sure if he'd win, but I reassured him that I believed in him, and I always would. Derek acted supportive, even posting on Facebook about his brave nephew overcoming disabilities. The morning of the tournament, I had to work. Derek promised to help Timothy set up. "I've got something special planned," he said. "Gonna make this kid a star." So there I was, putting the fries in the bag at work, when my phone started buzzing more than a girlfriend's toy in a long-distance relationship, because my Discord exploded with notifications. Timothy was streaming the tournament, but something was wrong. Friends were messaging frantically, and instead of seeing Valorant on the screen, I saw dozens of browser tabs, photos of our unalived grandmother, videos of our old dog being put down, recordings he'd secretly made of Mom crying after Dad left. The worst part? Between each emotional trigger, he'd embedded strobe effects at Timothy's exact seizure frequencies. "Come on, buddy," Derek's voice came through the mic. "Just react to something. Show them you're human," Derek repeated over and over, all whilst holding Timothy's shoulders, keeping him in the chair. Timothy's hands twitched on the keyboard, eyes locked open. The viewer count climbed as people shared the stream in horror. I called the ambulance but was put on hold. Then I heard it. A sound I'd never heard from Timothy during his numb periods. Crying. Tears streamed down his frozen face while his body seized. The emotional numbness and seizure activity had created a nightmare. He could feel everything but couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even close his eyes. Rage filled every organ in my body. I dropped everything and sprinted out of the restaurant. My manager yelled something about being fired, but I didn't care. Timothy needed me. I jumped into my hit-up Honda and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching against asphalt. The stream was still playing on my phone as I drove. Derek's voice continued through the speakers, calm and clinical. "See how his pupils dilate? Fascinating. The emotional barriers are cracking." My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I ran 3 red lights, honking at anyone who dared slow me down. When I burst through our front door 15 minutes later, the house was eerily quiet. No sounds from Timothy's room. I bounded up the stairs 3 at a time and found his bedroom door locked. I pounded on it with both fists. "Derek, open this door right now." From inside, I heard shuffling and whispering. Derek's voice was low, almost soothing. "This is just the beginning, Timothy. These therapy sessions will help you break through those emotional barriers permanently. Trust me." I threw my shoulder against the door. Once, twice. On the third hit, the cheap lock splintered and the door flew open. Timothy sat in his gaming chair, completely still. His eyes stared at nothing. His hands rested limply on his keyboard. Derek stood behind him, one hand on Timothy's shoulder. "Ah, you're home early," Derek said, not even looking up. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. "I've been recording everything. Clear evidence that Timothy is mentally unstable. Look at him. Catatonic. He needs institutional care." Derek Derek reached into a folder on Timothy's desk and produced official-looking documents. I took the liberty of getting my psychology credentials updated, and here's a recommendation letter from Dr. McBenjamin, a respected therapist. He agrees Timothy requires immediate psychiatric intervention. I snatched the papers and scanned them. The letterhead looked legitimate, but something felt off. The signature was too perfect, like it had been traced. These are fake, I said. Derek smiled. Prove it. Meanwhile, as the only available adult with psychological training, I'd be granted temporary guardianship while he receives treatment. My phone buzzed. Mom was calling. I answered and put it on speaker. I got your messages, she said, sounding panicked. I'm coming home now. What happened? Derek grabbed my phone before I could respond. Thank goodness you're coming. Timothy had a complete psychotic break during his tournament. I have video evidence. Your other son abandoned his job responsibilities while I was here trying to help. That's not what happened, I shouted, but Derek was already sending her files from his phone. 20 minutes later, Mom rushed through the door. Derek had cleaned up the room, hiding any evidence of his therapy session. He'd positioned Timothy in bed, making it look like he was resting peacefully. Look at these clips, Derek said, showing Mom his phone. The footage had been edited. It showed Timothy at his computer, but the context was completely changed. It looked like Timothy was doing this to himself, frantically clicking through disturbing content while I was nowhere to be seen. Where were you? Mom asked me, her voice sharp. At work, where you told me to be. Derek said he'd watch him. Derek pulled out more papers from his folder. I've been documenting the neglect for weeks. Look, he showed photos of Timothy sitting alone in the house, screenshots of my work schedule showing all the hours I was gone. The boy needs proper care, professional care. Mom's face crumpled. She looked between Derek and me, torn. I noticed Timothy's medication bottles lined up on his dresser. Something clicked. I grabbed one and examined it closely. The pills looked different, slightly off color. What did you do to his medication? I demanded. Derek's expression didn't change. I've been organizing them by day and time, helping out, but I saw it now. Tiny modifications, extra powder residue in some bottles. I remembered how Timothy's numbness had gotten worse lately, how his seizure sensitivity had increased. You've been tampering with them, I said, adding something to make his symptoms worse. Paranoid accusations from a guilty conscience, Derek said smoothly. I stormed into Derek's room and started searching. Under his mattress, I found it. A journal filled with cramped handwriting. I flipped through pages of notes about induced emotional responses in epileptic subjects and breakthrough trauma therapy. One entry made my stomach turn. Failed thesis rejection still stings. Professor McBenjamin said my methods were unethical and dangerous, but Timothy is proof the theory works. Extreme stimuli can break through any emotional barrier. I ran back to show Mom, but Derek had already started his next move. He was on the phone with someone, speaking in concerned tones. Yes, Child Protective Services? I need to report a case of severe neglect. 2 children in danger. Over the next hour, our house became a circus. Derek presented his evidence to the social worker who arrived. Staged photos of an empty refrigerator. He'd hidden our food. Pictures of dirty dishes and laundry piled up. Messes he'd created while Mom was at work. Documentation of all the times Timothy was left alone, ignoring that Derek was supposed to be watching him. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Victoria, took notes and photos, but when she tried to interview Timothy, something unexpected happened. Despite his catatonic state, his fingers moved slightly on his gaming keyboard. One key, then another. H-E-L-P. Victoria noticed immediately. She leaned closer, watching Timothy's fingers. Derek tried to intervene, claiming Timothy was having another episode, but Victoria held up her hand. Let him finish, she said. I had an idea. That night, after Victoria left saying she'd need to investigate further, I approached Derek with a bottle of whiskey I'd bought months ago for my 21st birthday. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot, I said. Tell me about your theories. I want to understand. Derek's eyes lit up. After a few drinks, he became animated, gesturing wildly as he explained his brilliant work. Emotional numbness is just a barrier, he slurred. Break through it with the right stimuli, and you can rewire the entire emotional system. Timothy was perfect, already numbed by his condition. I just had to find the right triggers. I kept my phone recording in my pocket, letting him talk. He bragged about the medication modifications, how he'd calculated the exact doses to increase Timothy's vulnerability. He detailed every session, every attempt to break through Timothy's barriers. Meanwhile, Timothy was slowly recovering in his room. I'd given him his clean medication, and the fog was lifting. He started recording himself using his gaming setup, but not speaking. Instead, he blinked in patterns. Morse code. His online gaming friends noticed immediately. They'd been worried since the tournament stream. When they realized what Timothy was doing, they started recording everything, creating backups, saving evidence. One of them, Jamie, was studying computer science and set up automatic cloud storage for all of Timothy's recordings. Days passed. Derek grew bolder, thinking he'd won. Mom was confused and exhausted, caught between her brother-in-law's expertise and her maternal instincts. But something was shifting. She started coming home at unexpected times, saying she forgot something or needed to check on Timothy. That's how she caught Derek in Timothy's room with a modified strobe light app on his phone, trying to trigger another seizure. I need fresh data, Derek was saying. The emotional breakthrough is so close. Mom stood frozen in the doorway. I heard her gasp and rushed in. Timothy had his eyes closed tight, using a technique his gaming team had researched and taught him. Controlled breathing, mental anchoring, ways to resist seizure triggers. What are you doing? Mom's voice was deadly quiet. Derek turned, still holding the phone. Continuing the therapy. You wouldn't understand the science. That was it, Mom snapped. She grabbed Derek's phone and threw it against the wall. Get out. Get out of my house. You can't do that. I have tenant rights. I have custody papers filed. I don't care. Mom pulled out her own phone. I'm calling the police. Derek laughed. And tell them what? That I'm helping your disabled son? I have all the evidence of neglect. I'll win any custody battle. He moved toward Timothy's computer. computer. In fact, I should probably secure this evidence of his instability. I realized what he was about to do. All of Timothy's recordings, all our evidence, Derek was going to destroy it. I moved to stop him, but he was already at the computer, yanking out cables. Too late, he sneered. Should have backed this up. That's when Timothy spoke. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, but clear. We did. Derek froze. Timothy continued, each word careful and measured. My team backed up everything, every stream, every recording, every time you hurt me. Derek's face went pale. He lunged for Timothy, but I tackled him, sending us both crashing into the desk. Mom was already on the phone with 911, but Derek had one more card to play. As we waited for police, he made frantic calls to his contacts at CPS, to the fake Dr. McBenjamin, who turned out to be his old roommate, trying to spin the story. He claimed Timothy's improvement was proof his therapy worked. The tournament was rescheduled for the following week. Derek showed up at the venue, trying to get inside, shouting about Timothy being unstable and dangerous, but the gaming community had rallied. Moderators blocked him at every turn. Security was briefed. Timothy's team formed a protective circle. I stood guard outside Timothy's room while he played. Mom sat next to me, holding a restraining order she'd finally signed after talking with a domestic violence advocate at her hospital. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have listened. Inside, Timothy was playing the game of his life. His team was in perfect sync. No emotional numbness now. He was fully present, calling out strategies, encouraging teammates. When they won the final round, I heard him cheer. Actually cheer. During the winner's interview, the host asked Timothy if he had anything to say to his fans who'd been worried. Timothy looked directly at the camera. His voice was steady and clear. My uncle tried to break me. He used my condition against me. He hurt me in ways I'm still processing. But my brother saved me. He never gave up. And this community, you all gave me strength when I had none. The chat exploded with support. Donations poured in for epilepsy research. Timothy pledged half his prize money to the cause. As we packed up to leave, police officers were waiting in the lobby. They had Derek in custody. The medical evidence of medication tampering was undeniable. The recorded confessions were clear. Child endangerment charges were filed. Derek made one last desperate plea as they led him away. I was helping him. Look how much better he is. My methods worked. But Timothy just shook his head. I got better despite you, not because of you. That night, Timothy knocked on my bedroom door. He was carrying a guitar case, the electric guitar I'd dreamed about for years, but could never afford. What's this? I asked. You're half of the prize money, he said, for being the brother who saved me. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. You gave up everything to protect me. Your job, your time, your childhood. This is just a guitar. As I held the instrument, Timothy sat next to me. Will you teach me to play? I think I want to try new things, feel new things. Yeah, I said, strumming a chord. I'd like that. Mom appeared in the doorway, holding cups of hot chocolate. For the first time in months, we felt like a family again. Not perfect, not healed, but together. Timothy's emotional numbness wasn't cured. It still came and went with his epilepsy. But now he had tools to cope, people who understood, and a brother who'd always have his back. And Derek? He was finally where he belonged, far away from vulnerable children, facing justice for his crimes. The guitar felt good in my hands. Timothy smiled as I played the first notes. Mom hummed along. We were going to be okay. The guitar strings vibrated under my fingers as I strummed another chord, but my concentration shattered when Mom's phone rang. She answered with a smile that quickly faded. What do you mean he made bail? Her voice cracked. The medication tampering alone should have... She paused, listening. A clerical error? How is that possible? My stomach dropped. Timothy's fingers froze on the guitar neck he'd been examining. Mom hung up and turned to us, her face pale. Derek's out. His lawyer found some technicality about the evidence collection. The judge granted bail. Within hours, our doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. Behind her stood Derek, wearing a concerned expression that made my skin crawl. Child Protective Services, the woman announced when Mom opened the door. I'm here for a follow-up evaluation. Mr. Derek has filed an emergency petition citing new concerns. Derek stepped forward, his voice dripping with fake worry. I've been so concerned since my release. The trauma these boys have endured. You're not allowed here, Mom said, starting to close the door. The CPS worker, a different one from Victoria, held up official papers. Ma'am, Mr. Derek has been granted supervised visitation rights pending the investigation. The court found irregularities in the initial complaint process. I watched Derek's smirk as he entered our home. He'd found a way back in. Over the next week, Derek appeared daily with different CPS workers. Each visit brought new concerns. He'd point out Timothy's gaming setup as enabling addiction. He'd question my unemployment status after being fired from the restaurant. He'd document every minor household issue with photographs. During one visit, while the social worker was inspecting Timothy's room, Derek leaned close to me in the hallway. Those recordings your brother made? My lawyer says they're inadmissible. Recorded without consent. The medication evidence? Contaminated by improper handling. You've got nothing. He was building a new case, piece by piece. This time he was being careful, legal, official. Timothy tried to maintain his normal routine, but Derek's presence during supervised visits made it impossible. Whenever Timothy would game, Derek would loudly express concerns about screen time to the social workers. When Timothy took his medication, Derek would question whether Mom was administering it properly. I'm just worried about proper oversight, Derek would say, documenting everything in a leather notebook. The worst part was how reasonable he seemed. He'd bring educational materials about epilepsy. He'd ask thoughtful questions about Timothy's treatment plan. To the rotating cast of social workers, he looked like a concerned uncle. They didn't see how Timothy's hands would start trembling whenever Derek entered the room. One afternoon, while Mom was at work and I was helping Timothy with homework, Derek arrived with a new social worker and a man in a white coat. This is Dr. Victoria, Derek announced, a specialist in pediatric neurological disorders. The court court approved her evaluation. Dr. Victoria set up equipment in our living room, a portable EEG machine, various testing materials. She was professional, clinical, asking Timothy to perform various tasks while monitoring his brain activity. Derek hovered nearby, occasionally whispering to the doctor. I caught fragments. Emotional dysregulation, previous incident, pattern of instability. During a break, I cornered Dr. Victoria in the kitchen. Did Derek tell you he was tampering with my brother's medication? She gave me a measured look. Mr. Derek informed me about those allegations. However, the lab results were inconclusive. Cross-contamination made it impossible to determine if any tampering occurred. But the recordings were obtained without proper consent and show signs of editing. She pulled out a tablet, showing me Timothy's stream, but it was different. Clips were rearranged. Audio was modified. It looked like Timothy had staged the whole thing. This isn't the original, I protested. According to the digital forensics expert Mr. Derek hired, this is the only version that could be recovered from the damaged hardware. Derek had been busy. While we thought we were safe with our evidence backed up, he'd been working to discredit everything, hiring experts, creating doubt, building a counter-narrative. That evening, after everyone left, I found Timothy in his room, staring at his blank monitor. I can't stream anymore, he said quietly. Every time I try, I think about him watching, using it against us. We'll figure this out, I promised. But the words felt hollow. Mom came home exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Derek's campaign was working. Her supervisor at the hospital had received anonymous concerns about her fitness as a parent. She was under review. They're questioning my shifts, she said, collapsing on the couch, saying I leave you boys alone too much, that I'm negligent. The next day brought another surprise. Derek arrived with legal papers. I've been approved as a temporary educational advocate for Timothy, he announced. Given his condition and recent trauma, the court wants to ensure his educational needs are being met. This gave him access to Timothy's school records, teachers, and medical information. He started showing up at Timothy's school, having concerned conversations with administrators about Timothy's deteriorating condition. I tried to fight back. I reached out to Victoria, the first social worker who'd seen Timothy spell help. But when I called her office, they said she'd been transferred to another district. Her replacement had no record of that incident. Derek was systematically eliminating everyone who'd witnessed his abuse, creating a new narrative where he was the concerned uncle and we were the unstable family. One morning, I woke to find Derek in our kitchen, making breakfast. Mom stood frozen in the doorway. The court granted me temporary residence, he said cheerfully. Given the ongoing investigation, they want a responsible adult present at all times. He'd moved back in, legally. Timothy stopped eating regular meals. He'd take food to his room, afraid to be in common areas where Derek might appear. His gaming performance suffered. His team noticed, but Timothy couldn't explain without Derek potentially using it as evidence of paranoid delusions. Derek's presence was constant, watching, documenting, waiting. During one of his educational advocate visits to Timothy's school, Derek convinced the administration that Timothy needed a modified schedule, fewer classes, more therapeutic time that Derek would supervise. It's for his own good, Derek explained to Mom. The stress is clearly affecting his condition. These therapeutic sessions were subtle torture. Derek would have Timothy do breathing exercises while showing him photos, not traumatic ones, but images carefully chosen to evoke small emotional responses. He was mapping Timothy's triggers, learning exactly what affected him. See, Derek would tell the observing social workers, he's making progress, learning to manage his emotional responses. To them, it looked like therapy. To Timothy, it was Derek probing for weaknesses. I started sleeping outside Timothy's door. Mom took time off work, risking her job to be home more, but Derek used this against us too. The family's clearly in crisis, he told the latest social worker. The older son won't leave Timothy alone. The mother's jeopardizing her employment. They need intervention. Everything we did to protect Timothy was twisted into evidence of dysfunction. One night, I heard Timothy's door creak open. Derek stood in the hallway, phone in hand. Just checking on him, Derek said innocently. Heard sounds. Wanted to make sure he wasn't having an episode. But I saw his phone screen before he could hide it. A strobe app. Not activated, just ready. I know what you're doing, I whispered. Derek smiled. Proving it is the problem, isn't it? The breaking point came during Timothy's follow-up neurology appointment. Derek insisted on attending as Timothy's educational advocate. The neurologist, Dr. Min, had been Timothy's doctor for years. She knew his history, his patterns. But Derek came prepared with charts, graphs, documentation of Timothy's deteriorating condition. He painted a picture of a child spiraling out of control, failed by inadequate family care. I'm recommending residential treatment, Derek announced. There's a facility that specializes in pediatric neurological disorders with behavioral components. Dr. Min looked skeptical. Timothy's been stable on his current medication regimen. I don't see any medical necessity for residential placement. Derek pulled out more papers. 3 independent evaluations disagree. Dr. Victoria, Dr. McBenjamin, and Dr. O'Benjamin all concur that Timothy needs intensive intervention. All Derek's people. All his manufactured evidence. Those aren't Timothy's regular doctors, Mom protested, which is exactly why their objective opinions matter, Derek countered. Dr. Min stood firm. I won't sign off on this. Timothy's condition doesn't warrant institutional placement. Derek's mask slipped for just a moment. Pure rage flashed across his face before he composed himself. We'll see what the court thinks, he said quietly. That night, our internet went down. Then our phones. Derek claimed it was a technical issue, but I saw him near the router earlier. We were being isolated. The next morning, 2 police officers arrived with a court order, emergency custody transfer. Derek had filed an emergency petition claiming Timothy was in immediate danger. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos of Timothy's weight loss, documentation of his social withdrawal, reports from multiple experts about his deteriorating condition. This is kidnapping, Mom screamed as they prepared prepared to take Timothy. It's court-ordered protective custody, one officer said apologetically. You can appeal at the hearing tomorrow. Timothy looked at me, terror in his eyes, but also determination. As they led him past, he tapped my arm. Morse code. Check the guitar. Inside the guitar case I'd left in Timothy's room, I found a USB drive taped under the strings. Timothy had been preparing. The drive contained everything: original recordings, unedited streams, screenshots of Derek's journal entries. But more importantly, it had new evidence. Timothy had been recording Derek during those therapeutic sessions. Every subtle threat, every manipulation, every moment Derek thought he was unobserved. But we still needed a way to get it to someone who would listen. Mom and I spent the night preparing for the custody hearing. Without phones or internet, we had to drive to a library in the next town to access email and contact lawyers. Every attorney we called said the same thing. Derek's case looked strong on paper. Without compelling counter-evidence admissible in court, Timothy could be placed in the facility Derek had chosen. The hearing was at 9 a.m. We arrived to find the courtroom packed with Derek's experts. Dr. Victoria testified about Timothy's neurological instability. The fake Dr. McBenjamin presented charts showing behavioral deterioration. Social workers read from reports documenting our family's dysfunction. Derek sat at his table, looking concerned and professional. He'd won, or so he thought. Just before the judge made her ruling, the courtroom doors opened. Victoria, the original social worker, walked in. Behind her was someone I didn't expect. Jamie, Timothy's online friend. Your Honor, Victoria said, I have evidence that hasn't been presented. The judge looked irritated. This is highly irregular. It's also highly relevant, Victoria continued. I was transferred after documenting concerns about Mr. Derek. That transfer was arranged by someone who's now under investigation for falsifying credentials. She produced documents, real ones, showing Derek's psychology degree was from a diploma mill. His credentials were purchased online. His entire professional history was fabricated. But Derek's lawyer objected. Even if true, this doesn't negate the current concerns about Timothy's welfare. That's when Jamie stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm part of Timothy's gaming team. We've been monitoring his well-being through our matches. I have data showing his performance metrics, reaction times, and strategic thinking have remained consistent throughout this period. The only variable that correlates with his reported deterioration is Derek's presence. Jamie had charts, graphs, statistical analysis, hard data that couldn't be faked or manipulated. The judge called a recess. During the break, Derek cornered me in the hallway. You think you've won? He hissed. I'll keep coming back. Keep filing petitions. Keep finding ways. That boy is my proof, my vindication. I won't stop. Yes, you will, said a voice behind us. We turned to see a man I'd only seen in old photos. Our father, Dad. Hello, Derek, Dad said quietly. We need to talk about what you did to my sons. Derek went pale. You can't be here. You gave up custody. I gave up custody to their mother, Dad corrected. Not to you. And I've been watching, collecting evidence. Did you really think I'd let you hurt them? Dad pulled out his phone, showing a recording. It was Derek, from years ago, hammered at a family gathering, bragging about his plans to study induced trauma responses using available subjects. I've had private investigators watching you since you moved in, Dad continued. Every falsified document, every bribed official, every crime. It's all documented. The hearing resumed. Dad's evidence was presented. The FBI had been notified about the interstate fraud Derek had committed with his fake credentials. Multiple jurisdictions wanted to question him about forged documents. The judge's ruling was swift. Derek's petition was denied. All his permissions were revoked. A permanent restraining order was issued. As court officers moved to arrest Derek for contempt and fraud, he made one last desperate move. He pulled something from his pocket, a small device with a button. If I can't have my proof, he said, looking directly at Timothy, then no one can. He pressed the button. Nothing visible happened, but Timothy suddenly gasped, his body starting to convulse. Derek had planted something, a device emitting frequencies at Timothy's exact seizure triggers. I lunged for Derek, knocking the device from his hand. Mom caught Timothy as he fell. Court officers restrained Derek as EMTs rushed in. It's in the walls, Derek laughed as they dragged him away. In the vents, everywhere. My final experiment. The courthouse was evacuated. Bomb squads swept the building, finding dozens of small devices Derek had hidden over his many visits, each one calibrated to Timothy's specific triggers. Timothy recovered in the hospital, surrounded by his gaming team who'd driven hours to be there. The devices were all found and destroyed. Derek was charged with attempted murder, among other crimes. I'm sorry I wasn't there, Dad said, sitting beside Timothy's hospital bed. I thought leaving was protecting you. I didn't realize it would let him in. Mom took Dad's hand. We all made mistakes, but the boys survived them. Timothy looked at me. The guitar's still in tune? I smiled. Yeah, still in tune. As Timothy recovered, the gaming community rallied again. Fundraisers for epilepsy research, awareness campaigns about medical abuse. Timothy became an inadvertent spokesperson for others who'd been victimized by people claiming to help them. Derek's trial would come later. His fabricated career unraveled, revealing years of fraud and manipulation. Other victims came forward. His obsession with proving his theories had left a trail of damaged lives. But in that hospital room, we didn't care about Derek anymore. We were a family again, broken, scarred, but together. Timothy was safe. The nightmare was over, or so we thought, because Derek had one more card to play. One final manipulation that would test everything we'd rebuilt. But that revelation would come later. For now, we had this moment. Timothy's steady breathing, Mom's relieved tears, Dad's protective presence, my guitar waiting to play again. The war wasn't over, but this battle, we'd won. The hospital room felt suffocating despite the open windows. Timothy's monitors beeped steadily while Jamie sat beside him, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. The rest of his gaming team had set up a makeshift command center in the corner, multiple screens glowing. building. Found another one, Jamie announced, pulling up security footage from the courthouse. Derek visited the building 17 times in the past month, always carrying that same briefcase. I leaned over to look. The timestamp showed Derek entering through different entrances, sometimes dressed as maintenance, other times blending in with crowds during busy court sessions. Mom paced near the window, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke with the FBI agent assigned to Derek's case. Timothy's hand moved slightly on the bed. Not a seizure tremor, but deliberate movement. He was typing on an invisible keyboard, muscle memory from thousands of hours gaming. Jamie noticed and quickly pulled up a virtual keyboard on his tablet, positioning it under Timothy's fingers. WALLS. Timothy typed slowly. HOMETOO. My blood ran cold. Derek had said the devices were in the walls. If he'd planted them at the courthouse during his many visits, our house had been his testing ground for months. Dad was already moving, pulling out his phone to call the bomb squad, but Timothy's fingers kept typing. NOTJUSTDEVICES. What else? I asked, but Timothy had exhausted himself. His hand fell still. The next 3 days blurred together. Hazmat teams swept our house, finding 14 devices hidden throughout the walls and ventilation system, but they found something else too. Cameras. Tiny, wireless cameras that had been streaming everything to remote servers. Derek had been watching us for months, studying our routines, our conversations, every private moment. The FBI tech specialist, a young woman named Agent Chen, showed us the setup on her laptop. He was running facial recognition software, analyzing micro-expressions. Look at these files. Folders upon folders of data. Timothy's emotional responses cataloged by the millisecond. My sleep patterns. Mom's work schedule predicted with algorithmic precision. Even Dad's arrival had been anticipated, with contingency plans outlined in Derek's digital notes. This goes beyond simple stalking, Agent Chen said. He was conducting unauthorized human experimentation. We're looking at federal charges. But Derek's lawyer was already working. News of his arrest had attracted attention from a high-profile defense firm specializing in mental health cases. They were painting Derek as a brilliant but troubled man whose good intentions had spiraled out of control. Timothy was released from the hospital after 5 days, but returning home felt impossible. The walls had been torn open to remove devices, leaving gaping holes covered with plastic sheets. We stayed in a hotel, all 4 of us crammed into a single room because Timothy couldn't sleep alone, and I couldn't leave him unguarded. That's when the packages started arriving. The first one came to the hotel's front desk, no return address. Inside was a thumb drive containing hundreds of hours of footage from the hidden cameras. Not the original files, but edited compilations. Timothy's worst moments, his seizures, his numbness, all set to classical music like some sick documentary. Hotel security reviewed their cameras but found nothing. The package had been left during a shift change, the delivery person's face carefully obscured. The second package arrived at Mom's work. Photos of Timothy printed on medical paper with fake diagnostic notes in the margins. Subject shows improvement under stress protocols. Emotional breakthrough imminent. Derek's fantasies presented as medical documentation. Dad hired private security, 2 former military guys who took shifts watching our hotel room, but the packages kept coming. To Timothy's school, to my former workplace, to the gaming venue where Timothy had won his tournament, each one designed to humiliate, to remind us that Derek's influence reached everywhere. Timothy stopped eating again, not from fear this time, but from rage. I'd never seen him truly angry before, not even during his emotional episodes, but now his hands clenched into fists whenever Derek's name was mentioned. I want to testify, Timothy told the prosecutor during our 3rd meeting. I want everyone to know what he did. The prosecutor, Ms. Martinez, looked skeptical. You're 12. The defense will argue you're too young, too traumatized. They'll claim your testimony is coached. Then I'll show them, Timothy said. He pulled out his phone, opening an app I didn't recognize. My team helped me build this. It's everything. Every stream, every recording, every piece of evidence. All blockchain verified so they can't claim it's edited. Jamie leaned forward. We've been working on it since Timothy got out of the hospital. Immutable proof of timeline. Original files preserved with cryptographic verification. We even got testimony from other streamers who witnessed the original tournament incident. Ms. Martinez examined the data, her expression shifting from skepticism to interest. This is comprehensive, but Derek's lawyers will still argue that I'm unstable, Timothy interrupted. Let them. I'll take any test they want. EEG, psychological evaluation, whatever. I'm not hiding anymore. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. Derek remained in custody after the judge deemed him a flight risk, but his lawyer filed motion after motion. Requests for psychological evaluations, claims of prosecutorial misconduct, demands for access to Timothy's complete medical history. We moved to a temporary apartment while our house was repaired. Dad took leave from his job to stay with us. The security team remained, checking every delivery, every visitor. Timothy returned to gaming, but differently now. He streamed everything, building an audience of supporters who'd followed his story. If Derek wanted attention on my condition, Timothy told his viewers one night, then let's give it to him, but on my terms. The response was overwhelming. Other epilepsy patients shared their stories. Parents of children with neurological conditions offered support. Medical professionals provided resources. What Derek had tried to exploit became a source of strength, but Derek wasn't done. 3 weeks before trial, his lawyer filed an emergency motion. They'd found an expert witness, Dr. Eliza Hoffman from Switzerland, who'd supposedly developed revolutionary treatments for emotional numbness in epileptic patients. Her methods, the motion claimed, aligned with Derek's approach. She was willing to testify that Derek's actions, while misguided, were based on legitimate therapeutic principles. Mrs. Martinez was furious. She's not even licensed to practice in the United States. This is clearly a delay tactic, but the judge allowed it. Dr. Hoffman would be permitted to testify via video link. Her credentials looked impressive on paper. Published research, international conferences, glowing testimonials. Dad's private investigator, a former journalist named Marcus, started digging. What he found made everything click into place. Dr. Hoffman doesn't exist, Marcus announced during an emergency meeting. The person is real, but she's an actress. Swiss theater mostly. The real Dr. Hoffman died 3 years ago. Someone's been using her identity, publishing papers under her name. Derek, I said. He's been planning this for years. Marcus nodded. The papers started appearing right after his thesis was rejected. He created an entire alternate academic identity to validate his theories. We had 48 hours before Dr. Hoffman was scheduled to testify. Marcus flew to Switzerland while Agent Chen worked with international cybercrime units. Timothy's gaming team went into overdrive, analyzing every paper Dr. Hoffman had published, finding inconsistencies, recycled passages, fabricated data. The morning of her scheduled testimony, Derek's lawyer requested a delay. Technical difficulties, they claimed, but we knew better. They'd discovered we were onto them. Judge Morrison was not amused. Mr. Derek has been orchestrating an elaborate fraud from his jail cell. This court will not be made a fool of. Derek's lawyer tried to withdraw, but the judge denied the motion. The trial would proceed as scheduled. On the first day, the prosecution laid out their case methodically. The medication tampering, the hidden devices, the systematic abuse disguised as therapy. They played Timothy's recordings, showed the blockchain-verified evidence, presented testimony from real medical professionals about the damage Derek had caused. Derek sat at the defense table, no longer the confident manipulator. His manufactured reality was crumbling. When Timothy took the stand, Derek couldn't even meet his eyes. Timothy spoke clearly, without emotion at first. He described the numbness, the gaming, the trust he'd placed in an uncle who promised to help. Then, as he recounted the tournament day, something shifted. The emotions Derek had tried to force out of him came naturally, not through trauma, but through truth. He wanted me to feel, Timothy said, looking directly at Derek. But I already could feel, just not the way he expected. Gaming wasn't an escape from numbness. It was where I felt most myself. He couldn't understand that, so he tried to break me into his idea of normal. The defense's cross-examination was brutal. They questioned Timothy's memory, his interpretation of events, his current mental state. But Timothy remained steady, answering each question with the same tactical precision he brought to gaming. When they suggested his testimony was coached, Timothy pulled out his phone. Want to see the practice sessions? I streamed those too. Full transparency. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, child endangerment, fraud, cyberstalking, and 12 other charges. Derek would serve a minimum of 25 years. As court officers led Derek away, he turned back one last time. Not to look at Timothy, but at me. You could have understood, he said. The breakthrough was so close. I said nothing. There was nothing to say to someone who saw my brother as an experiment rather than a person. Outside the courthouse, Timothy's gaming team waited with a banner. GGEZ'd. Gamer speak for good game, easy win. Timothy actually laughed, the sound bright and genuine. It wasn't easy, he told them, but we won. The media wanted interviews, but we declined. This wasn't about fame or attention. It was about Timothy reclaiming his story from someone who'd tried to steal it. That night, we had dinner at our repaired house. The walls were patched and painted. No trace of Derek's devices remaining. Dad cooked while Mom set the table. Normal, everyday activities that felt precious after everything we'd endured. Timothy looked up at me. Thanks for not giving up. Never, I promised, and meant